public.
So good afternoon, everyone, and to Dr. Ken. So we'll be talking about preparation before a test and briefly description about what's a test. So anyone can tell me what's a test? Okay, so for me, a test is like a game. You just need to know the rules and the regulation. So you just like go through the rules and regulation and you know what to do in a test. So methods to counter a test, there's 4 steps, which is prepare, absorb, record, and review. So prepare, obviously, it's like preparation, do study the notes and the lecturers highlight points, and absorb what they want us to know. Record as in recall everything, and review and apply it on the test. So I'll be passing it to Chris.
Now I will talk something about taking tests. So first, the tips of tests. You should be aware of difference in types of tests because this will help guide you how you prepare for them. Two general types of tests based on their objectives or how they are intended to be used: formative assessment and summative assessment. Formative assessment include quiz, unit test, pop quiz, and review quiz from a textbook or its website. Their main objective is to work your final grade. Many students think they are not very important. In fact, the quiz are very important, particularly to you. They can help you to identify what you know and what you still need to learn to be successful in the course and in applying the material. Summative assessment include midterms and finals. They are used by the instructor to determine if you are mastering a large portion of the material, and as such, they usually carry a heavy weight towards your final grade for the course. Because of this, they often result in high levels of test anxiety and long study periods. In addition to this classification by objective, tests can also be grouped into various categories based on how they are delivered, and each type has its own peculiar stages. First, paper tests are still the most common type of test, requiring students to write answers on the test page or in a separate test booklet. Remember that the instructor will be reading dozens of test papers and will not likely spend much time trying to figure out your hieroglyphics, arrows, and crossouts. Open book tests allow the student to consult their notes, textbook, or both while taking the exam. When preparing, know where key material is present in your book and notes. Create an index for your notes and use sticky notes to flag key pages of your textbook before the exam, but don't misrun them. Take-home tests are like open book tests, except you have the luxury of time on your side. Make sure you submit the exam on time. Know what the instructor's expectation are about the content of your answers. The instructor will likely expect more detail and more complete work because you are not under a strict time limit and because you have access to reference materials. Be clear about when the test is due. Also find out if the instructor allows or accepts you to collaborate with classmates. online tests are most commonly used for formative assessments, although they are starting to find their way into high-stake exams, particularly in large lecture classes that fulfill a graduation requirement. Since these tests are computer grade, be aware that the instructor's judgment is not involved in the grading. Your answers will be either right or wrong. This is no room for correct response. With online tests, be sure you understand the testing software. Find out if you will be allowed to move freely between test sections to go back and check your work or to complete questions you might have skipped. Unless your exam needs to be taken at a specific time, don't wait until the last minute to take the test. Now, some tips for taking tests. What else can you do to ensure success on the test? Learn and apply this top 7 test taking strategies. First, learn as much as you can about the test. And 2, try to foresee the questions likely to be on the test. These questions. And 3, don't be tempted to stay up late cramming. Get some exercise and watch what you eat. Cramming is not a substitute for doing your assessment and studying consistently over time. 4, get to the test set early. Take out all your allowable tools. Turn off your cell phone as a way of disconnecting from your everyday world. Do some of the relaxation exercise described earlier for controlling test anxiety. 5, create a test plan. When you receive your test, scan the entire test first. Then create a time allocation plan. Decide how much time you should dedicate to each section. Everyone doesn't want to spend 80% of your time on a question worth 10% of the grade. And 6, read the directions carefully. Then reread it down. Do you understand what is expected of you? If not, ask the instructor to be sure you are clear. 7, check your work. This doesn't mean going through all your calculations again. Start by ensuring that you have complete answers according to the directions.
Okay, good afternoon everyone and to Dr. Ken. Now I will talk about the studying. When we talk about study, we know that now many students are studying just for the test or for the final exam. But we have to remember that we are studying is not just for the final exam. We are studying is for learning something new, and we are studying is for learn something to make it use it in our real life. And in this section, our learning objectives is first, you must test the test with your confidence and not anxiety, because if you are very anxiety in your exam, you only will get worse in your exam. The second is how to learn how you to use your notes, not just for the test, but for learning. And the third is use the strategies to having effective studying. And the last, you can form the study goals for the better studying. And the first step of studying is studying every day. The studying every day is not mean that you are studying in classroom, but in other time in it when you are nothing having class or you have some times to study. And there is three tips for you for studying. The first is gather your learning materials. Take time to merge your notes. How do you complement each other? Stop and think about it. And what do the notes tell you about the material? What aspect of the material are you unsure about? If you have any misconception about your question, make sure that your question was answered. This having two reasons is because first one is your question. The question is fresh in your mind, so you don't won't forget it. And the second is instructor usually build their lesson or material already present. Apply and visualize. Think what this material is meant to you, and how do you use this new knowledge. You can try to apply this your new knowledge in your real life or if you cannot apply it now, you can visualize it about how you use this knowledge. And the last one is segment your knowledge. If you use the two columns not taking method, then cover up the right side of your notes with a paper. If you are unsure about anything, look up the answer and write down right away. And don't let the wrong answer become a last thing that you see, because this will cause you most likely to continue remember the wrong answer. Studying in course unit. Each end of each unit, at least 2 weeks or so, use your notes and textbook to write an outline and make a summary it. After you have written the summary or outline, go back and reread your outline from the prior unit, followed by your one you just wrote. Okay, more tips for success. First, schedule your study review time for each course at least 1 week. And second, get yourself in the right space. Choose to study in a quite well-lit space. Your chair should be comfortable but provide a good support. So, and the library is the best option for you because the library was designed for the reading. Third is minimize the distraction. Turn off your cell phone and get away from the Facebook, your television, or any activities. Include your chatty friends. Take a short break if you are studying for a long time, at least once hours, about 10 minutes or 10 minutes to 15 minutes. And the last one is studying in groups. Study groups is a great idea as long they are thoughtfully managed. A study group can give you a new perspective about course material and help you to fill your gap in your notes. And there is the tips for you to study in groups. Think small. You don't have to gather many person in it. You just have about 3 to 4 person to help you in your study, and go for quality. Look students who are doing well in the course, who ask question and who was participation in the lesson well. And don't make a friendship the primary consideration because for who should be in your group. Look for the complementary skills and learning styles. These skills will go for you because your weakness will be countered by another students. When a subject requires a combination of various skills, strengths in each those skills will be helpful. And meet regularly. When you first set up the study group, agree a regular meeting, schedule and stick it. Moving study sessions times around can result in non-participation, lack of preparation, and eventually to collapse the study group. And the most important is to keep your session to allotted times. If you waste your time and regularly meet longer than you agreed to, the participant will not feel they are having a good study value. Define an idea of an objective. Give your study session focus so you don't get sidetracked. And based on the requests and comments from the group, the moderator shall develop the agenda. Include some of following items in your study groups. Review and discuss class assignment notes since your last meeting. Discuss your assignment reading and quiz each other on class material. You can also retest the aspect that you are unsure about, and brainstorm the possible to test question. Critique each other ideas. Define the question to ask the instructor. Then is assign follow-up work. Rotate the role of the moderator or discussion leader. The next section is using the test result. So far we have focused to how to study and test the test effectively. In this section we will discuss about how to use the test result to make the greatest benefit in it. When you receive your test result, the first thing you do is you want to know what result you get. Then you are comparing it to your friends. This is normal. This is normal, and but when you receive your test back, you have to evaluate your test result. This is the example for you to having for you to make you improve. This table is too much, so I can give you the PPT later if you want. Okay. The next is correcting your mistakes. When you're having mistakes, you have to correct your wrong action. The last time you wrote the information, or when you took the test, you create a link to wrong information in your memory. And for the multiple choice, work out the question stem with the correct answer to form a single correct sentence or phrase. For the true or false question, work for statement if it's true, or if it's false, reword it in such a way that it's true. For the math and science, the question is in full calculation, so you can redo the entire solution with the calculation and write it out fully. You need not to write the entire essay question if you do not do well, but you should create a new outline for what would be a correct answer. Make sure you incorporate any ideas triggered by your instruction comments. When you have a rewrite all your answer, read them all out before incorporating your new answer in your notes. Integrating your text into study guide. Your corrected quiz and midterm exam is an important study tool for your final exam. Make sure you file them with your notes. Pay particular attention to any gaps in your notes on the topic that appear in quiz or exam. Reset those points in your text or online and complete your notes. When you prepare for final exam, start by reviewing your quiz and other tests to predict the kind of question that will asked by your instructor. If you don't get your text back, you can make an appointment with the instructor to text the note on what you have trouble with, expect the answer, and you can ask him to take your test to review. Add notes into your study guides and make sure you don't lose your opportunity to learn from your result.
Hello everyone, my name is Qin Zifan. Now I will talk about what is text anxiety and how to control it. Do you have a hard time starting to study for a test, or when you study for an exam, you feel desperate or lost? If you have suffered some of the symptoms of text anxiety. Text anxiety is a psychological condition in which a person feels distressed before, during, or after a test. It is normal to feel stressed before an exam. It may be a good thing, such as help you focus on exam, but suffering too many stress symptoms or suffering any of them severely will impede your ability to show what you have learned. If you have stress in test, I will give you some advice. The first is be prepared. A primary cause of test anxiety is not knowing the material. If you take good class and reading notes, this stress should be greatly reduced, if not eliminated. You should be confident going into your exam, but not overconfident. Next is bounce bad vibes. Your own negative thoughts, such as "I would never pass this exam," when you feel you are brewing a storm of negative thoughts, Stop what you are doing and clear your mind. Allow yourself to daydream a little. Don't go back to work until you feel the tension release. Next is visualize success. Picture what it will feel like to get that A. Translate that vision into specific, reasonable goals and work toward each individual goal. Take one step at a time and reward yourself for each goal you complete. Next is all about you. Don't waste your time comparing yourself to other students in the class, especially during the exam. Keep focused on your own work and your own plan. Exams are not a race, so it doesn't matter who turns in their paper first. Remember, it's all about you. And next, make sure you eat well and get a good night's sleep before the exam. Hunger, poor eating habits, energy drinks, and lack of sleep all contribute to text analysis. Contribute to text anxiety. The honest truth. Now I want to talk about the honest in our test. We have focused on the active process of learning, not just on how to get good grades. The attitude of some students that grades at the end or in academics has led many students to resort to academic dishonesty to try to get the best possible grades or handle the pressure of an academic program. You should be mindful of the consequence of cheating. First, you don't learn as much. Cheating may get you the right answer on a particular exam question, but it won't teach you how to apply knowledge in the world after school. Nor will it give you a foundation of knowledge for learning more advanced material. Next, you risk falling the course or even expulsion from school. Each institution has its own definition of and penalties for academic dishonesty, but most include cheating, plagiarism, and fabrication. And you should know the rules in your school. Ignorance of the rules is seldom considered a wide defense. Finally, you are throwing away your money and time. Getting a college education is a big investment of money and effort. You are simply not getting your full while when you cheat, because you don't learn as much. You are a student, you should be honest in your test. Now is the part of Q&A.
So the secrets of Q&A. Q&A refers to the question and the answer in the test. So we'll be talking about Q&As right now. So I guess you guys are familiar with the questions, which is multiple choice questions, true or false, matching columns, short answers, and essays. Multiple choice, obviously it's like you're given few choices and you just pick the right one. And true or false, just pick one true or false. Matching columns, it's like there's left hand side and right hand side. You should match the correct answer to the correct item. And for short answers, the answer is mainly about 1 to 2 sentence, and for essays will be like a short paragraph. So there's a lot of keywords come out in our exams. I guess you guys are familiar with it, which is analyze, compare, contrast, critique, define, discuss, explain, illustrate, prove, and summarize. These keywords tell us to give the correct answer, which is like with given noun or like given given keywords. So here's the honest and the cruel truth about tests. You don't learn as much as you study. So let's say you'll be having a test of a book tomorrow, but if you studied the whole book and you go to the test, you still won't be able to finish the test by 100% accuracy. So don't try to push yourself so hard. You risk failing the course or even expulsion from school. Cheating causes stress. You're throwing away your money and time. You're trashing your integrity, and cheating lowers self-esteem. So here's some questions. So which one is the tip for taking tests? The answer is C. Study with reference book given by instructor. So which one is not a tip for group study? The answer would be B, because study in quality but not quantity. Thank you. Thank you.
Can I do need a copy of it. You can send it to me if you want to. Fine. In fact, it'd be good for you to, if you could put your names in the order that you presented and send me the PowerPoint. Like on the front page, put first speaker, second speaker, third speaker. Then send it to me by email. Okay. Thank you. Here I can just end it here. Okay. Still think it's busy. What do we have here? I think you can take it out now. I don't. What's this? No, that's not yours. I don't see anything open. I think you can take it out. Yeah. Thank you. Okay, we're wrapping up our study of the 7 habits. I think we have one more week to cover a few things, but then the rest of the semester will be about other important ideas from other important people. So the 7th habit is sharpen the saw. Anybody know what that means? Kind of an odd title, right? All the other titles have been somewhat understandable. This one seems a little odd. So, anybody know what he means when he says sharpen the saw? He goes back, he tells a story in his book, and others have told different versions of it, but he tells a story in his book about how this guy is walking through the woods and he comes upon this clearing, and there's a woodsman chopping down a tree. Or trying to saw down a tree, I guess. And he's sawing, trying to bring down that tree. And the other guy says, "Hey, wait a second. You know, you're wasting a lot of energy here. Well, let's sharpen that saw, and it'll go a lot better." And the guy said, "No, I don't have time to sharpen the saw." Well, the point of it is that actually there's some things you can't afford not to do. You think you don't have time, but you cannot afford not to do certain things like sharpen the saw. You'll actually save time by stopping and stop exerting so much effort trying to saw down a tree with a dull saw than if you'll sit down, relax a little bit while you're sharpening the blade, and then continue your work. Now he applies this to more than just the physical aspect, but to all aspects. Before we get into a little bit further, though, there were a few things that I wanted to kind of review as we get to the end of this, as kind of reminders of what we've talked about to this point. Hopefully we've looked at things a little bit differently. We have a different perspective on how to be successful. Today's habit hopefully will be part of that. Einstein said the way we see the significant problems we face cannot be solved at the same level of thinking that we were at when we created them. And indeed, most problems we do create, and it's our own fault if you think about it. And so if we're going to solve those problems, we need to not just try to keep doing the same thing. That old definition of insanity is to keep doing the same thing and expecting different results. So we need to learn to approach things differently in order to be more successful. We talked about basic principles. As you recall, Dr. Covey believes that that ultimately all of these habits are based on sound principles of living that are taught by essentially all religions. They're not brand new, but what he's found is that many of the success books in the recent decades have been trying to take shortcuts. Things like dressing for success, how to look successful and achieve success by looking successful, not by actually doing anything that's worthy of success, so to speak. There's some very superficial things to try to achieve success that ultimately they might work in some situations, like dressing for success. That's not a bad thing to do, but it's not the most fundamental things as compared to the habits that Dr. Covey's been trying to teach us. Such as, all of them. Begin with the end in mind, being proactive, begin with the end in mind, putting first things first, thinking win-win, seek first to understand, then to be understood, achieving synergy, and then making sure that you have a balanced life that where you're, as I started to say, kind of you're sharpening the saw. These are habits that will help you to achieve success that are not superficial. These are ones that are not necessarily easy. Once you understand them, they're easy to understand, but not necessarily easy to implement. That they may require some effort on your part to do this. He does not suggest you try, how do I say it? He does not think that anybody can accomplish them all at one time. Let me put it that way. He suggests that maybe you should work at, you understand them all, and yes, to some degree you're trying to apply them all, but you might try to focus on one at a time. Analyze yourself, analyze your behavior, your attitude, and try to again, focus on one of these habits for a month or something, and just really work at being, for example, starting maybe with proactive. They don't necessarily you don't need to necessarily adopt them in order, but that is number one. So just think about what does it mean in your life to be proactive, and try to implement that in your lives and so forth. Go down, just focus a little bit. But the foundational principles are that he thinks that are ultimately, I might say eternal, that are fundamental to life are things like fairness and integrity and honesty, human dignity, the principle of service, the principle of potential, understanding that everybody has more potential than they themselves even know, and that we accept that also. That we accept that people can be better, they can improve, and if we're an employer, for example, how do we help them improve? Now, I can tell you as an employer or a former employer that there are some times when your efforts to make them improve can hurt you badly, because that's been actually one of my faults. There is a place where you, as especially you have a responsibility to your entire organization, you can't let one person bring you down. And so there's this is Ken Harvey, habit 1, I guess, I don't know, habit 20. You have to be careful about that. If they are doing things that hurts everybody, you can't let them do that. So on the other hand, you want to recognize people's potential. You want to help them improve, and that should be a consistent part of your management style, is to help people improve themselves. So these are the basic principles and paradigms that he bases everything else on. So these aren't habits. These are just, he thinks, are basic truths of human interaction, things that we need to accept as fundamental before we can really go on beyond that, in a sense. So he's, unlike some of the other paradigms and some of the other books and so forth, he does not suggest an outside-in change. He's saying this has to be inside out. You have to work on yourself first. You have to become a proactive person. This isn't what you do, this is what you become, in a sense. Being instead of doing. Can you be a proactive person? Now, the other ones may seem like they're doing, but it actually is, I think all of them are ultimately becoming rather than doing. Beginning with the end in mind, even. You say, well, that's not being, that's sitting down and planning it out. But it is being in the sense of understanding and always having your mind set on the ultimate goal. The ultimate, what is it you want to do in life? What's your mission in life, if you would, is the word he would use. And so it is part of becoming. It becomes part of your very nature to be always remembering, now this is important, but that's my mission. And if you don't keep your mission in mind, whatever you think your mission in life is, then that's where you start going off in the wrong directions as you're building your road through the jungle of life, so to speak. And so, when we're talking about inside-out changes and inside-out solutions, it is becoming something else, not just doing something else. He talked about the maturity continuum, and this kind of goes along with his idea that this isn't something you do overnight. You can understand it, read the book, you understand the principles. You may be able to cite the principles. You may be able to define the principles, but becoming the principles are something else. And we are in a maturity path, you might say. We all began dependent on our parents. There's nobody pops out of the womb and says, okay, it's time to go to work. We all have to go through the continuum to some degree, beginning with dependence. Whether we like it or not, we are dependent on our parents when we're young. And so we grow and we mature through this until we achieve some level of dependence or independence, excuse me. So that is a progressive sort of thing, but some people don't grow out of it. They hang on to as much of immaturity as they can. You probably know some people like that. They're immature and they're proud of it. They have no mission in life except let's have fun. Let other people take care of me. Whatever. And they have kind of their goal in life is to never be mature, in a sense. Ultimately, then, as his point was the first 3 habits really all relate to independence. Achieving our independence is accepting our ability to control our future, our environment to some degree. That we go back to that 90-10 principle. There's 10 things we can't do it. 10% of things that happen to us in our lives we can't do anything about, other than our response to them. But our response is the most important thing, and that really ultimately leads to controlling about 90% of our life, is if we learn to control our response to the 10%. We can decide the rest. We can control the rest. And then the interdependence are the last, particularly, well, the next three habits, all are interdependent principles. We are achieving our interdependence maturity as we learn how to work with other people, as we accept the win-win principle, as we start being able to apply this idea of this habit of seeking first to understand, then to be understood, as we start achieving synergy with other people, where we can achieve more together than we can even adding our best ideas, that we start using things like brainstorming strategies to try to do more than that, to together achieve something greater than we could have if we were just working by ourselves in separate rooms, so to speak. Just 1 + 1 does not equal 2 if you achieve synergy. It equals 3 or 4 or 5. It can multiply your achievement if you learn how to achieve synergy. Okay, so I just wanted to kind of review some of those basic concepts. Now we get into this last habit. Again, take time to sharpen your saw. And let's go ahead and I think we'll go ahead and listen to Dr. Covey first. He has, and listen to a 3-minute video here. Okay, so as we're talking about sharpening the saws, we're talking about 4 dimensions of that. And let's talk about that a little bit. Physical, that's easy. We know what we have to do physically, right? It doesn't necessarily mean you have to become an athlete, professional athlete. It doesn't even mean that you necessarily have to lose a lot of weight. I carry quite a bit of extra weight, but when I'm not in pain, I injured myself a while back. Some evenings I walk 15 kilometers. And I don't, that's easy for me. I can swim 2 kilometers without any problem. So I've got the strength and energy to do it. If I keep it up, the doctor tells me that I need to be doing it in order to keep my heart healthy. So it doesn't necessarily mean, being healthy doesn't necessarily mean you lose all your belly fat. It'd be nice, I'd like to. But if you, I don't see anybody in here that's particularly overweight, but even if you were, or if you think you are, some people think they are when they're not, that doesn't necessarily mean the same thing as being in good condition. American football players, a lot of them are like, 6'8", 400 pounds, 350 pounds. They have to be in good condition to play football. But they're not skinny. In fact, they sometimes purposely put on weight so that when they run into somebody, there's more oomph to it. And so they want to gain weight. Same with basketball players. Even though basketball isn't supposed to be a physical sport, some of the things that they try to get some of these skinny guys to eat a lot more, put on some more weight, because they're being pushed around by the big guys in the when they're playing even basketball, which is supposedly not a physical sport. But they're still in excellence. They can run and run and run, all at a level that would make most of us dizzy. So the main thing is to be doing it. Is don't get lazy in your physical condition. Be healthy. Be able to have the stamina to do stuff. But it also relates to things like sleep they're talking about. Now, I told you before, I disagree with what was taught today from my own personal life as far as getting plenty of sleep before you take a test. I don't do that. I let my adrenaline go after me, and I'll stay up all night preparing. I'll go through the textbook and write down my notes on my note cards of everything that I think is important in that textbook, and I'll go through those note cards over and over again all night. in order to get the grade I want on that test, I can do that. I don't know. Maybe, if you don't feel the adrenaline rush, you can't do that. Because it has to be off of adrenaline. Otherwise, you're going to get, you will bomb out. So everybody's going to be a little bit different. Even now, though, my best work is at night. And that's partly from being a journalist. Is my work as a journalist, a lot of it was at night. And you have certain deadlines for putting out the newspaper, and I would sometimes have to work all night to hit my deadlines. So that's become part of my life. But it started off as a student, actually, before I became a journalist. When it came down to crunch time, when it came down to a final exam, I would let my adrenaline take over and push me through. But anyway, there's other areas that are also important. Again, back in physical, they talk about stress management and nutrition. Make sure that you're eating the right stuff. Make sure that you have vitamins. That doesn't necessarily mean that you're taking vitamin pills. I try to avoid being dependent on vitamin pills in a sense. And then when I get a cold or something, I can kind of, I think my body responds better to vitamin pills if I don't use them every day. So I use them when I need them, like when I catch a cold or something. Then I hyperdose in vitamin C. And some of the other things that doctors say help you get over a cold. So, but you do need to be making sure you're eating well, getting good nutrition, and managing stress. Stress is one of the most harmful things you can do. Is have stress. And again, everybody's going to be a little different. The very fact that I'm a workaholic, you'd think that causes me stress, and it does some, a little bit. But actually, the worst stress I ever felt was when I didn't have any work. After I sold my first newspaper as a kid, as a young man, a little bit older than you guys, but I was 25 when I bought my newspaper, and 27, I guess, when I sold it. Yeah, so 27. And I had some money in my pocket, and I didn't have to work. I was getting ready to go to get my master's degree, but I wasn't able to get it right in, so I had like 4 months before I would start my master's degree, and I was sick all the time, and I was stressed all the time because I'm used to being active. I'm used to doing stuff. So you're going to have to figure out yourself, who are you, and what causes you stress. I can cause myself stress by overdoing things, by trying to multitask on too many things, but I can also stress by not having enough to do. So I have to do it my way. Social emotional. One of the principles that I do like to teach, I think I've mentioned it before, but I do believe in service. I do believe that it's important that we serve other people without expecting compensation sometimes. Community service, church service, whatever. Serving other people, doing stuff you don't have to do for the betterment of mankind, for the betterment of your community. And I think we do benefit, even though we don't try to sometimes. It wasn't our goal to. I think I mentioned when I first joined the university in Kazakhstan, where I joined their committee to put on their international research conference, and I ended up doing a lot of the work, and they became somewhat dependent on me. Later became the first chairman that wasn't in the business college. The business college was the college that had initiated it. That I had no intention of doing anything in that to benefit myself. And yet, when you're involved with trying to serve other people, it does come back. It does benefit you. Even if you had no intention of benefiting yourself, people see what kind of person you are. A little bit like what Dr. Covey was talking about on the opposite side. He was talking about, when he's talking about the emotional bank account, one of the things he said was, watch what you say to other people about somebody who's not with you. In other words, talking about other people. Well, it's kind of the same thing. I mean, people understand what kind of person you are. If you talk bad about other people when they're not in the room, they know that you'll talk bad about them if they're not in the room, if you don't like them for some reason. On the other hand, if when people start criticizing the president or whoever they're criticizing, and you start trying to, kind of explain where he's coming from, look at things from his perspective, and try to, calm down the rabble and all their complaints, they'll understand that you will do that when somebody criticizes them in your presence. And so that they trust you not to say bad things about them. Well, this is kind of the same thing. If you dedicate some time to service selflessly, without any expectation of getting anything back from it, people understand that. And that's kind of where, when I was telling that story before, it came down to after 4 months of work towards this conference, they had those 7 things to do, and they decided I was the only person who could do 4 of them. Well, now that really doesn't make any sense in a room of a dozen people, that one person has to do 4 of them and the other 11 have to do 3 of them. That doesn't make any sense, but somewhere in my providing that service, they decided that I not only was capable of doing most of the work, but I was willing to. Dr. Covey said something in this video that he said the greatest ability is dependability. And that's the first time that's really hit me hard, was when he said that. The greatest ability is dependability. And that's kind of what I'm saying, is that when people know that you are dependable, that's the most important ability you have, that they can trust you to get something done. And I can say that definitely has worked in my life. Being empathetic, obviously, how do you interact with other people, but how do you renew yourself in this? How do you renew yourself in a social, emotional way? Part of that is also getting enough rest, not having stress. When do you snap at people? Is when you're stressed out, when you don't have enough rest, when you're not feeling well. And so all these things kind of interact with each other. If you're taking care of yourself physically, you're going to be a lot better in how you deal with people in a social, emotional way as well, how you respond to them. Now, you also have to be practicing these habits of seeking first to understand and things like that to build your social network and your social relations with other people. You have to think about that emotional bank account and how you can do that. But still, ultimately, if you're thinking about ways of improving your social, emotional, part of it does go back to physical. Part of it is just you can't be a hermit. You've got to be out, working with other people, doing things with other people. If you are introvert, I'm actually an introvert person. I can sit in my office all day and be perfectly fine. I don't need anybody. I'm an introvert. There are, like myself, introverts who do okay, in public settings, like being professors and stuff like that. That doesn't really change their basic nature. I am very happy to be by myself. I'm my best friend, so to speak. But I have to push myself out of that, especially as an introvert. Especially as an introvert, I have to do that. I used to go, as a newspaper person, I would have to go to cocktail parties. I hate cocktail parties. For one thing, I don't drink. So everybody else is getting drunk, and I'm drinking, the hard stuff I drink is Coke. Coca-Cola. That's my hard stuff. If I feel they're really feeling radical, I'm going to drink my Coca-Cola. I'm here at a cocktail party, nursing my Coca-Cola while everybody else is getting drunk, and I'm an introvert. This is very awkward for me. I read a book. The book was How to Work the Room And they said, basically, if you're an introvert, if you feel awkward in situations like this, pretend that you're in charge. So in other words, I take on a role kind of like I do as a professor. I suddenly say, okay, I have to be outgoing because I'm in charge. And you actually take on that persona even if it's not your party. Even if it's not your party, you're introvert, but you decide, okay, I'm in charge of this thing. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make sure everybody's happy. I'm going to talk to people, take their hand, and just, you know, whatever, I'll just work the room. I'm just going to go around and get to know people and so forth. And you do it as if you were in charge. It was your party, even if it's not. And I started using that. I'm better now at working a room than I used to be by a lot. Because I would just, when I was young, I pretty much find a corner. Where's the closest corner for I can, go hide in? Because I did not like that setting at all. It was not me. So sometimes in your social emotional self, you have to push yourself a little bit and be willing to take some risks. Again, introverts don't like to take risks. Not in that sense. They don't like social risks. And you need to learn how to take social risks and work and build that your social emotional make yourself more powerful. You might say that way. Mentally, of course, that's something an introvert does naturally. But all of us should be. We maybe talked a little bit. Lifelong learning is so important now. You really need to plan to be pursuing more learning throughout your life. In America, the projection is that we're going to have at least basically 8 different careers in our life, 8 jobs, but jobs that may not be anything like each other, which didn't used to be. My dad was pretty much, well, I guess he had 2 jobs. He did do some sales when he had to have some extra money. But he was, and he was good at that, but he was a farmer and he loved his farming and he was a farmer forever. A lot of other people would get into one specific job and they'd be in that job forever. But that's not the way it is anymore. And technology is changing stuff. Even if we had one job, to keep that job, we better be learning technology. Otherwise, we're going to lose that job and be looking for something else anyway, because everything's going technical. I mean, everything. And if we don't grow with it, we're doomed. I myself, I don't know. Like I say, this has come pretty natural for me. I've always been hungry to understand new stuff, and so that's the only reason I'm really here, is that I know stuff that other people younger than me don't know, because I kept learning. And so, in Kazakhstan, I was the only one doing, like classroom videos and stuff like that. And even here, I mean, not very many people do this. They may have some video knowledge. We have people in my department that teach video. That's their job, is to teach video communications. But nobody really works video like I do that I know of in the university. And I started doing it because I recognized how important it was in online. First off, how important online communication was, and secondly, from everything I read, the most important online communication is still video. And so, if you don't have video, if you don't do video, you don't communicate very well online. And so, I do live video, YouTube videos. I think video all the time. And that wasn't my training. My training was in print journalism. But when if you want to keep progressing, you have to keep learning new stuff. I was desktop publishing. I teach the editing class here, and it's because when the world started going to computers, one of the most important things in the journalism industry was desktop publishing. That you prepared your newspaper on a computer and then sent it to the press. Before that, they were doing stuff by hand. They were printing out a long strip of headlines, long strip of the body text, They'd print the pictures in the dark room with halftones, do some work in the dark room, and then they put wax on the back of all that stuff and paste it onto a page, and then take it back to the dark room to make a negative of it, and then make their print plate from that. Well, in the mid-1980s, as the PCs started developing, they started developing desktop publishing to do all that work on a computer rather than doing it outside the computer. And I was one of the first ones to learn that. And that still, even now, I'm the only person in our department that knows desktop publishing. And I've been doing it since 1986, basically, is when I started learning desktop publishing. But you have to keep building it. It was a big aha for me when Barack Obama won the presidency, and he did it basically based on online marketing. And until then, nobody took online marketing seriously. And so I said, okay, I've got to learn online marketing because he's just changed the world. The whole world just changed with Barack Obama. Now, I didn't like him as a president, but he changed the world. He didn't change the world to anything, but I mean, I thought it was a joke when he got the Nobel Peace Prize, and he hadn't done anything yet. He got the Nobel Peace Prize when he was president for like one month, and then he was a terrible president from my perspective. He didn't deserve the Nobel Peace Prize. But what he changed the world in was in marketing. Not that he did it himself, but he won the U.S. presidency. He was not middle of the road. He was left of the middle of the road, and he changed the world through his use of online media. So that to me was probably the most important thing he did. And everything changed. In 1 year, after Barack Obama became president and used social media to do it, I think Twitter increased like 10 times. The number of people using Twitter grew by 1,000%, and Facebook by 500%, something like that. I have it in a slide someplace, but so Facebook increased fivefold, 500%, Twitter tenfold, 1,000%. That's changing the world. And so now in the last 2 years, I've written like 10 book chapters on online marketing in 5 different books, because I've had to learn that. It's critical, it's so important even though my area is journalism, as a newspaper publisher, I need to know how to survive. Most newspapers in America are dying because they don't know how to make this transition. And so when I saw that the transition was how it was being driven by social media and so forth, I had to learn that. So basically, that's why I'm still why I'm both in the industry still, and why I'm teaching still, because I'm curious enough to keep learning this stuff. I've built dozens of web pages. I started doing that within, I think, 2 years or 3 years from when the World Wide Web was created. I started building web pages. No training in that. I just started figuring out. I can't remember how I even got started, but I was doing it, and then my daughter, based on what I was doing, she worked her way through college building web pages for the university. At that point, nobody knew how to do web pages. Hardly anybody. It wasn't a common skill, and they didn't have common tools to do it. And so you had to do it all in HTML. There was nothing to help you build a web page. It had to be all in basic HTML to build a web page. And so it was not necessarily a real easy thing to do in those days. But like I said, my daughter worked her way through college doing it. So anyway, lifelong learning, you don't know where it's going to lead you either. I had no idea. I took a class on a database in the mid-1980s. And I don't even know why I took it. I was just curious. I had no intent. I had no thought at the time that it would ever be of any use to me. But because I was teaching at the university, they were allowing me to take a free class. And I thought, yeah, I guess I'll take database. And so, and then about 4 4 years later, I got a job where it was one of the most important things I knew was database. And I won't go into all the details on how I used it, but I used it in very revolutionary ways in marketing. It was marketing that I was using it for, actually. But how you use data right now, that's actually one of the most important things in modern marketing is data. And I started applying it in 1992 is when I started applying data to my marketing ahead of most other people. And I could only have done that because about 4 or 5 years before that, on a lark, I took a database course not knowing that I'd ever use it. But I did, and it was very, very, very valuable for me. So keep learning. Learn out of curiosity. Learn out of, I don't know, be driven. Let it drive you because you do need it. You will improve. Your jobs will improve. And when you learn something, Steve Jobs, I don't know if you've heard it, but he was, I may have mentioned this already. I'm sorry if I'm being redundant. But he gave a talk at Stanford University at their graduation. And of course, he never graduated. But, and because it was because his parents were too poor. He didn't feel like he wanted to pay the tuition. And so he dropped out, but Stanford didn't mind if people came in and sat in on classes. If they weren't taking tests, they weren't bothering the teacher, they didn't take it, like right now. I don't care if anybody walks in here. I wouldn't probably notice. And so he just started walking into classes. So he's taking classes without credit. And because he was doing it without credit and without registration, nobody was telling him what he had to take. And so he just started taking classes that he wanted to take, that he's curious about. Kind of like me taking the database course. No reason for it, I'm just curious. So he just started taking courses he wanted to take. And one of the courses he mentions in his graduation talk was he took calligraphy, which is how to write pretty. I can't even imagine taking a course in calligraphy. But anyway, he was curious, so he took a class in calligraphy. That turned out to be one of the most important things for Apple, because he had to invent typefaces for the computer world. And he did that based on his calligraphy. And so his calligraphy, a class that I think sounds like one of the stupidest classes to ever take, ended up being very important for him. And that's been my experience, is when I learn something, it is never useless. And somehow it is important in my life. And you don't always understand why, you don't anticipate it. Like my learning database, I had no intention of ever using it. But it ended up being vital to my success, as was calligraphy for Steve Jobs. Makes no sense. In fact, if you were to, if he was going to tell you one of my most important classes was calligraphy, you'd try to figure out, what world are you from? Why would calligraphy be important to you? But he explained in the talk why it was important. He had to invent typefaces for the computer world. So anyway, so keep looking, keep growing mentally. Spiritually, that term might have different mean different things to different people. Some of you may be atheists, and I don't want to impose on your world, so to speak. Because we all live in our world. We live in our own, as Dr. Covey says, we kind of have our own little world we live in. We see things through our glasses, our own paradigm. And so how we see the world certainly does matter, whether we believe there's a God or not. That's part of our paradigm. Whether you like it or not, it is. I do a lot of things because I do believe there's a God that I maybe wouldn't do if I didn't think there was. And there's other things I don't do because I think there's a God that otherwise I might do. So it definitely is part of our paradigm of life, whether or not we think there's a God. And so, but spirituality, by some people's definition, doesn't really necessarily mean need to include God. For those who are religious, that's kind of hard to understand spirituality without a God, but there are a lot of, there's a textbook we study in our department where the guy goes through a whole chapter about spirituality without God, so to speak. But it's certainly, a lot of people do believe in meditation who don't necessarily believe in God. And what is meditation? It's kind of self-reflection. It's kind of, well, it is a different realm. It is not, there is not knowledge, because you're not getting any new knowledge by meditating, per se. At least not unless, I mean, I put it this way, I think I do get new knowledge by meditating, but if you don't believe in any outside forces helping you get new knowledge while you're meditating, then your only conclusion would have to be that it's going on in your own brain, that the meditation is good. It gives your brain a chance to be innovative or whatever, and I don't exclude that, by the way. In fact, I've mentioned before the one consultant's how he programmed his brain at nighttime so that when he's sleeping it'll solve his problems, for his come up with ideas for how to solve business problems for his clients. And so I definitely believe the brain is an amazing thing that we don't take full advantage of. I definitely believe that. But I do believe that meditation can go beyond just what is in our brain. But you know, that's my paradigm. So I don't know. It's hard for me to exactly address spirituality to people that aren't religious. But at the very least, let me put it this way. So the most important times of my life have been when I'm bored. I think I told you this already. In fact, just the other day I was bored again. I can't remember where I was at. Well, I was in a doctor's office, that's right. I have I have to have oral surgery next week. I broke a tooth. And so I had to sit there for nearly an hour. Very valuable time. Very valuable time. I'd say that's one, when I start talking about sharpening the saw, that's one of the areas I really need. I need to sometimes just not have anything that I have to think about in order to let my brain think about what it wants to think about, so to speak. It's get into the innovation mode, get into the spiritual mode. I don't know what you want to call it, but give my brain, and it can be a little bit of both. It can be somewhat, it could be God-related spirituality, and it can be just your brain working, having a chance to innovate, letting your right brain go to work. I don't know how you want to describe it or explain it. I don't really care. But I can tell you this, that some of the most valuable times I've had in my life have been when I've had nothing else I had to think about and just wanted to let my brain go free, so to speak. When I was a kid, right before I graduated from high school, my parents did go to church, and they took the other kids, and I wrote a note saying I need to go spend some time up in the hill by myself. And so, yes, I did pray up on the hill by our farm. And I spent probably 6 hours up there, walking the hill, stopping every so often and thinking and praying and pondering about what I want to do in my life. One of the most important events of my life was walking that hill for 6 or 7 hours with nothing but time to ponder what my life is all about. Again, part of my question is what it was about in relationship to God, but that's whether it's your own brain working or whether there's something else going on, there's some valuable time, again, however you want to explain it, in having time to think beyond yourself and letting your mind, letting it go. What is my life all about, for example? That's a big question I have to ask every so often in my life. My life has changed. So I don't ask to say, I'm not asking the same question as when I was 18 or 17 or 16. You know, now I'm 68. What's my life all about now that I'm 68? That's a different question because I'm at a different point in my life. And I need some time to ponder the last part of my mission, so to speak, my mission in life. And so it is, to me, extremely important to have some time to do that. One of the biggest mistakes I made, it kind of relates to what Dr. Covey was talking about, the oil man from Seattle who was taking his course from him, and how, and apparently it was stretched out over a period of months, that they were maybe meeting once a month with him or something. I'm not sure exactly the scenario, but he had realized that he was not enough of a leader, that he was a manager. He was a hands-on manager for his company, but he wasn't a good enough leader. And part of that comes from these areas. He wasn't having time to sharpen his saw. He wasn't having time to create. He wasn't having time to ponder the mission of his business. He wasn't having time to synergize. I call it sometimes internal brainstorming. Within myself, I'm brainstorming. And I'm arguing with myself. Oh, yeah, we could do that. No, we could do that. And it's like having multiple personalities, I guess. I'm arguing. Have you ever done that? Have you ever talked to yourself? Or am I the only crazy one here? I talk to myself a lot. And I argue with myself a lot. And I brainstorm with myself a lot. And I think it's very valuable. And that's kind of maybe part of this meditating is my internal brainstorming, perhaps you could call it. Where I'm letting my mind just go and ponder. And once I get into that, I can fill up a page of ideas real fast. Things that I would like to pursue and ways of pursuing them, books I'd like to write. I can map out the chapters, whatever it is that strikes me at the time. And in fact, again, I know some areas, some of those are not related to God. I know that. I know it is purely internal brainstorming. So I'm not hung up on the idea that everything that comes in my head is coming from God. We have amazing brains. That if there is no God, there's still amazing brains that can do amazing things. Way more than we give them credit for, that we comprehend. And we need to give them a chance to do it. And part of that is, I think, finding that time where you can go out and just let it, I don't know, how you want to define it. I call it sometimes internal brainstorming. And just go out and think, ponder, meditate. Sometimes I fast. I fasted up to 4 days before. When your body gets weak, sometimes your brain gets stronger. Your brain, you can't go out and do a lot if you fasted for a couple of days. You no longer have the strength for your body, but your brain doesn't stop. Your brain keeps going. And so I find that once in a while. In fact, there was a story just in the last month or so, maybe 2 months, that said if a person does a 3-day fast, it will reboot his immune system. So it even has physical effects. It reboots their immune system. And so actually I was planning to do that in the near future, do it again for 3 days to reboot my immune system. Because at my age, I need a strong immune system. So anyway, lots of things here. If you don't take care of yourself, if you're not revitalizing yourself in all these different ways, you're not going to be as successful. You simply aren't going to be. And what I found, what I started to say a second ago, is like this guy, this petroleum guy, he multiplied his profitability of his company several times over in less than a year by just becoming the leader of the company and not the manager. By taking the time to do some self-renewal, some self-reflection. And that's what I, at times have done well and at times have done badly. And with this one newspaper I'm thinking about, I did it badly. And it did not turn out well because I was being the manager, not the leader. And I was not taking the time to do it the right way. So encourage you to understand that it's an important principle. Okay, we're about out of time. Let me just flip through this. The PowerPoint slides. There wasn't a lot in it, mostly the videos, and you should watch the videos. Flip forward. Mostly videos are kind of short, but they go into some more detail. Some of these are not by Covey himself. Anyway, Abraham Lincoln, one of the greatest American presidents, said if I had 6 hours, and by the way, he grew up in the woods. They built their own log cabins. They did a lot of wood cutting where he was at, and he even worked as a woodcutter for a while. So he knew what he was talking about. If I had 6 hours to chop down a tree, I'd spend the first 4 hours sharpening the axe. So it makes that much difference to have a sharp axe, that he could do it and do something in 2 hours that otherwise would take him 6 or more if he didn't sharpen that axe. Talking about all those PPC. This also fits into this area. We've talked about it a little bit. I think we may have mentioned in the story, I think it's Aesop's fable of the golden goose. We talked about that. You're familiar with that story? Anyway, where the guy was poor and he was, I don't know, worried about how he's going to survive, feed his family, and he went outside one day and the goose in his farmyard had laid a golden egg. And and lo and behold, it was laying a golden egg every day. He was becoming rich and prosperous from this goose laying golden eggs, and a miracle. It was amazing. And then he got selfish and decided he wanted all the golden eggs at once. And so he killed the goose to get all the eggs. Well, there were no eggs inside the goose. Like any egg-producing fowl, it takes time to produce the other eggs. So once he killed the golden goose, he pretty much destroyed his income. And the point of this that Covey makes is that that's kind of PPC. That sometimes we go after short-term benefits and we damage ourselves long-term. PPC stands for production versus production capability. If we don't take care of our production capability, at some point we will no longer achieve high production. And so his example is the guy, the manager who is running a factory sort of thing, and he's has this one piece of equipment that is very pivotal to their success as a company. So he decides to put on workers, and he works it all day and all night, all day and all night, all day and all night, and he becomes the top guy in the company for being so productive. And he gets promoted, and somebody else takes over his job, and the machine breaks down. I mean, it lasted long enough for him to get his promotion, the one guy, and then somebody else gets blamed for it. You can't work a machine day and night and expect it to keep running. And it may not, you guys may not be, it seems like the other parts of the world are not into lawns as much as we are in America, but in America, we have these very thick lawns that we like to play on and so forth, like in a park. And so almost everybody owns a lawnmower. And almost everybody neglects taking care of the lawnmower. I say just about every American has gone through probably 5 lawnmowers. Certainly by the time they're my age, I'm sure I've gone through at least 5 lawnmowers because I never took care of my lawnmowers. And so, you know, the PPC, I could have had 1 lawnmower my entire life if I'd taken care of my lawnmowers. But they're like $100 or something, and I'm in a hurry. I don't have time to check the oil. I don't have time to do this and that or change the oil. And I don't sharpen the blades in it, and you know, whatever it might be. And so most Americans go through lots of lawnmowers because they don't do the PC. They want the production immediately, and they're willing to buy a new lawnmower in a few years when that one falls apart. But not necessary if they do some PC. And that's true. You know, his point is this is true for machines, but it's also true for us. So that's coming back to sharpen the saw. Sharpen our saw, so to speak. Sharpen our blades so we can produce, because if we don't, we break down. We cannot be as effective. if we don't take care of ourselves. And so that goes into the PPC. It is also, however, organizational in nature. It's not just about yourself, but also, are you allowing your organization to sharpen its saw? Are you helping the individuals within your organization to grow and to progress and to learn more, to be lifelong? Are you encouraging lifelong learning among your employees if you get in that position? Are you facilitating the PPC with people? It's not just machines, it's also with people. When I was in Kazakhstan only has 20 million people. It's the 9th largest country in the world, and it only has 20 million people. It's one of the least inhabited countries in the world. I was trying to teach my students. It's also a fairly, even though it has different nationality, different ethnicities in it, they really don't want anybody else coming. They're happy with their current balance of ethnicities, and they really don't want to encourage immigration. And so, the president, Nazarbayev, says he wants the country to be one of the top productive countries in the world. And my response to my students is, he has to encourage immigration. In fact, I compare it to the United States. In the United States, in 1835, we had 20 million people. We had a big country, lots of resources, just like Kazakhstan has a big country, lots of resources. We only had 20 million people. They only had 20 million people. And we had, one of the most important things for America was we opened our doors and said, everybody, come on. Everybody from any place, come on. Now, it's not that easy nowadays, but in the early days, for the first hundreds of years, if you count before our independence, it was that way. Anybody who wanted to go to the New World, willing to risk their life to go to the New World, they were welcome if they could find a way to get there. And so the population kept growing. And then I like to compare then Kazakhstan to Japan. Japan doesn't have anywhere close to the natural resources of Kazakhstan. Nowhere close. What does it have? It has human resources. It has immense and huge and powerful human resources. So the difference between, Japan was the number 2 there until fairly recently, was the number 2 economy in the world. Now they're going to have some problems because they are also anti-immigration, and they've got a problem with their aging society, and so they're in for some big problems. But what success they've achieved has been because of human resources, not natural resources. And Kazakhstan will never become a great economy until they understand that what they need is human resources to become a great economy. And so within your company, that's the same thing. It's your human resources that's the most important thing in your company. And so you need to, as a manager, as a business person or executive, you need to understand that. How do I take full advantage of my human resources and help them to become as successful as they can become? Because as they become successful, they will make me successful. Well, we are out of time. There again will be some videos you should be watching. I think most of them are up already, but I'm going to do some fine tuning this afternoon or this evening when I get back to my office and get your quiz up and so forth. One other thing I was going to say though, I hope you are working on your journal, keeping that up. Like 200 words a week is not hard. 3,000 words in the last week is really hard. And the worst thing you could do is plagiarize on that. There were a number of students who plagiarized in the last time I taught the class, and I'm not an idiot. I'm maybe sometimes, but I'm smart enough that I can catch plagiarization pretty well. And what I'm going to be doing is when we're all done towards the end of the semester, I want you to put them into one Word document. And I'm going to, not only am I not an idiot, but one of the reasons why I'm not going to be an idiot is that I'm going to use technology And so I'm going to run all this stuff through, it's all going to be run through Turnitin.com, which will check for plagiarism. So you don't want to plagiarize. It also helps, it will correct your writing, even though writing won't be the most important part of your grade by any means. It's your thoughts that I'm looking for, your self-reflections, that's the most important part. Nonetheless, I'll let Turnitin grade your grammar, or it'll show me the bad grammar, but that's not the most important part of this assignment. It's not, I mean, do the best you can, let me put it that way. But it's not, the most of the grade is on you're taking time to think about this stuff and think how you will apply it in your life. So don't plagiarize. If you have been, you better go back. And also just keep up with it. Again, if you're watching the videos, it should not be hard to come down with 200 words. Because after you watch the videos, you should have lots of ideas in your head that you could write down on paper. And 200 words is not much. Okay, thank you.